Today we have a new Prime Minister and a new government.
Let me tell them this. If it is the position of the government that they would like to take a look at the contracts that occurred over that period of time, and there is a finding that there was fraud on the government, that work was not delivered, that security clearances were not in place, anyone involved then should be banned for life from doing business with the government of Canada, and let's get that money back too.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Mr. Barrett, seconded by Mr. McCauley, moves that given that the Auditor General found that ArriveCan contractor GC Strategies Inc. Shall I dispense? Was paid $64 million from the Liberal government, and in many cases there was no proof that any work was completed. The House called on the government to A, get taxpayers their money back within 100 days of the adoption of this motion, and B, impose a lifetime contracting ban on GC Strategies, any of its subsidiaries, its founders Christian Firth and Darren Anthony, and any other entities with which those individuals are affiliated. The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
It's a pleasure to rise and to address this important matter for Canadians following the report by Canada's Auditor General. Now, before I get into the substantive portion of my remarks and the case for the imperative of getting Canadians their money back, but also to have a lifetime ban for the contractors involved in the principles of the contracting firm in question, I want to inform the Chair that I'll be splitting my time with the Honourable Member for Edmonton West. And it's actually a privilege to split my time with this member. We often talk about His Majesty's loyal opposition being a government in waiting. And it's interesting because there was an exchange recently between the Right Honourable Prime Minister, who is new to this place, and the member for Edmonton West, who's an experienced parliamentarian. And the Prime Minister, in a moment, perhaps in jest, but certainly exposing his lack of familiarity with members of the official opposition, he said that the member for Edmonton West didn't understand how things worked in this place, didn't know the difference between a budget and estimates, and I want to offer a bit of history to the Prime Minister, because it's really important. It's important that the Prime Minister understand who is holding him to account. Now, the member for Edmonton West has an office complement that is the same size as all members in this House. Now, ministers, of course, get much larger offices. They get political exempt staff, and then they get access to full departments. The member for Edmonton West, has a couple people that work in his office, just like the rest of us do. But in 2018, when the government tabled the budget, now, I don't know how many people work at the Department of Finance. There's a lot. There are thousands of them. And this budget gets tabled in the House, and the member for Edmonton West, on his own, in doing his due diligence, reviewing the budget, finds that the Minister of Finance and the Ministry made an error of about $150 million. Now, the Honourable Member, he was able to correct the homework of the government, of the Minister, of their staff, and the entire Ministry when they laid that budget on the table here. So when we bring things before this House, it's because we've done our due diligence, and it's because we're going to do what we've always done, and that's punch above our weight. So while they have the weight of the entire public service, they have all of the extra resources that come with serving in government, there's also incredible responsibilities to get it right and to make sure that they get value for taxpayers, to make sure that when mistakes are made, that they're corrected, and when value isn't received, that it's corrected. So what we saw in the Auditor General's reports this week confirms what Canada's Conservatives had raised the alarm bell about in the previous Parliament. And on a range of issues that the Auditor General looked at, she found that there were massive cost overruns and in fact, negligence by the Liberal government. Specifically, in the use of the contractor GC Strategies, who was the preferred contractor in what's now known as the Arrive scam scandal. This was the app that the government originally pegged at costing $80,000. It ultimately cost many orders of magnitude more than that, in excess of $64 million. And on value for money, it just wasn't there. For context, and for new members to this place, it's important to note that when the official opposition initially raised concerns about the ArriveCan app, the government said that the app worked great, it worked as intended, they got value for money, and they had no regrets. They paraded people through committee over and over again with that refrain. But it turns out that that just simply wasn't the case. Now, when the leader of the opposition, Mr. ParlVu, he called for an Auditor General investigation, and there was a vote in the House. The Liberals, the cabinet that's responsible, the executive that's responsible for this project, this massive boondoggle, voted against having the Auditor General take a look at it. Now, why would they not want the investigation if they were so proud of it and if it had worked as intended? Of course, they knew that it was a corrupt process and they didn't want it to come to light. But we did our work, holding the government to account, checking their homework, and we found the errors. We found the grift that had occurred. And it's not just about the nearly $100 million in contracts that GC Strategies was awarded, a company owned by Mr. Christian Firth and Darren Anthony. It's about the procurement processes that were not followed. Let's take, for example, the imperative of security clearances. So this company, and I use that term loosely, these were a couple of guys working in their basement getting multi-million-dollar IT contracts from the government of Canada, working in their basement, but they weren't IT experts. And the contracts that they were awarded required security clearances. Some of the departments that they worked for included public safety, they were working for CBSA, they were working for national defense. And what did the Auditor General find? Found that 50% of contracts requiring security clearances, departments can't prove that these workers, subcontractors for GC Strategies, had the security clearance. And in over 20%, workers were actively on the job without a valid security clearance. This isn't a government that takes, this Liberal government isn't one that takes security seriously if this is what they deem an acceptable procurement practice. Now, what's going to be shocking for Canadians is anyone who's ever had a project done at home. You know, if you get a deck built at your house and you put a deposit down and the work is complete and it's satisfactory, you pay the contractor and you thank them for their hard work. But what we saw here was in 46% of the contracts, there was no proof of work delivered, but they paid them in 100% of the cases. It's unacceptable, and we know that because no household would do it, no small business would do it, and certainly the Government of Canada shouldn't have done it. So what we're asking for is reasonable, but it's also the minimum expectation that Canadians have of us as Parliament. And that's that within 100 days of the passage of this motion, that the government get Canadians their money back, and not simply let it stand that the name of the company who was involved in this fraud not be allowed to bid on government contracts for 7 years, that them, their principals, their subsidiaries have a lifetime ban on doing work for the Government of Canada on behalf of Canadians. This is what they expect of us. Now, we'll hear the rise of all kinds of partisan hackles over the course of today, but I think that this is a great opportunity. We're going to hear that this is a new Liberal government. And if it is, it's time for them to show that, let us smell that new car smell, that new government smell, rise above the partisanship, the instinct to oppose this for the sake of opposing it, vote with this common sense motion, get Canadians their money back, get accountability by banning these contractors, and let's show Canadians that when we tax a dollar for them, that it's going to go as far as it can, and if someone takes advantage of the Government of Canada, takes advantage of Canadians, we won't let it stand. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Government House
Yes,
Leader.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, interesting enough, Mr. Firth, the one that the Conservatives have been after for a number of years now, was actually part of a company known as Carney. Now, Carney was actually started up back in 2010 to 2015 and received many different contracts under Pierre Poilievre and Stephen Harper's government. Yet, I'm wondering if the member would apply the very same principles to Mr. Firth in that time when the Conservatives gave him contracts to the same principles he's applying with the former administration. And yes, Pierre Poilievre was there front and center with Stephen Harper, part of that government. Today we have a new Prime Minister and a new government, even further away from Mr. Firth than his own leader. His thoughts.
The member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
It's a great question from the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I thank him for that. Let me tell him this. If, through you, Speaker, if it is the position of the government that they would like to take a look at the contracts that occurred over that period of time, and there is a finding that there was fraud on the government, that work was not delivered, that security clearances were not in place, anyone involved then should be banned for life from doing business with the Government of Canada, and let's get that money back too. But today, the question is the government going to support this motion? So in any government speakers rising today, they should indicate if, how far back do we want to go to get Canadians their money back? I don't think there should be a limit because we must get value for Canadians.
Now on to the issue at hand, the GC strategies and the Arrive scam. And I've been here for 10 years now. I've never seen the country so consumed with a scandal. We've had plenty from this government. Of course, we had the SNC-Lavalin scandal where the Prime Minister interfered with the Justice Department. We saw the Prime Minister and his cabinet interfere to funnel money from the We Charity, in the We Charity scandal, to funnel try to funnel $900 million to their friends and family members. We had the Green Slush Fund, where we have the current finance minister oversaw $400 million getting grifted to Liberal insiders. And of course, the Edmonton-based other Randy scandal. So for all these bigger scandals, you have to wonder why did Canadians were so consumed by the Arrive can. And I think even though they weren't as large, the Arrive can's not as large financially, I think it's because so many Canadians had to deal with the broken Arrive can app. Millions had to endure the problems with Arrive can at the borders, coming in at the airports, dealing with an app that didn't work, dealing with an app that sometimes wouldn't work with certain Wi-Fi, enduring missed flights, long waits at the airport, enduring this horrible app that they thought, well, geez, it's a simple app that only costs $80,000. And then they found out this app that sent them into long lines and sometimes sent them into quarantine by mistake actually ended up costing over $60 million. I mentioned how it actually accidentally sent people into quarantine. An app upgrade came out and actually sent 10,000 people by mistake into quarantine. And we found out later, the government said, well, actually, we didn't test the upgrade before we issued it. Can you imagine? $60 million, and somehow they forget, they don't have the resources to check if the update worked. But that's okay. But again, what do you expect from an app, again, that only cost $80 million, we think? Now, I say we think because even the Auditor General cannot figure out how much this app cost, because the bookkeeping from this government was so poorly done. Literally, the departments have tens of thousands of people working in their accounting departments. The AG has a very large force, and they could not figure out how much this cost. Now, of course, we know the root cause of the problem and the root causes. Root cause is Liberal incompetence. Causes, of course, is the Liberal, almost a stalker-like affection for handing out Canadian taxpayers' money to high-priced management consultants, much like McKinsey. Now, McKinsey, if anyone realizes, is probably one of the worst corporations in the world. They help supercharge the opioid crisis. They represent some of the most despotic regimes in the world. If McKinsey was a human being, it would be a Bond villain. And yet the government violated procurement rules to shove money into McKinsey's pockets. Even when government staff or bureaucrats came forward and said, we actually have the bodies available to do this work, the government broke rules to give money to McKinsey. And it was the same kind of with ArriveCan and GC Strategies. Now, GC Strategies received close to $100 million from this Liberal government since they formed in 2015. A company that had 2 employees working in someone's basement, doing no IT work, doing no other work except for getting government business, and then contracting out with someone else. No programming skills. Their only skill they seemed to have was how to work with the Liberal government to fleece money from Canadians. They basically won contracts and then subcontracted it out to others, taking a 15 to 30% cut on the way. Now, in what world does a company with just 2 people get so much money and then do no work? Well, a Liberal world, apparently. They actually even managed to win contracts and then sub it out to Microsoft. Now, Microsoft is a pretty large company, and yet Microsoft is not able to win the contracts from the government, but GC Strategies did and subbed it out. Now, what happened when this came to light, this outrageous conduct came to light? Well, the Liberal government, instead of fixing it or saying, yeah, you know, there was an error, let's look after it, they gaslighted Canadians. They insisted the ArriveCan app saved thousands of lives. 8 different ministers, including the Prime Minister, and parliamentary secretaries stood in this House and said ArriveCan saved up to 10,000 lives. And then they accused the opposition of being anti-vax and anti-science if they didn't believe in the ArriveCan app. Well, I guess the Auditor General must be anti-science as well, because she's come out with 2 damning reports on this government and its conduct dealing with GC Strategies. Now, procurement has gotten so bad with this government, they actually force bureaucrats and officials to put in writing that they're attesting that they followed government procurement rules before they award a contract. Now, you think it would be kind of inferred as a condition of employment that you're not going to break the law or break rules when awarding contracts, but not with this Liberal government. They actually force them to put it in writing. Now, GC Strategies, the issues alight that we're trying to get the money back for, here's some of the issues. They created and used fraudulent documents to ensure subcontractors' resumes met criteria for contracts, fraud. Subcontracted individuals, but their work and payment were funded through other companies using the same general contract, fraud. Without knowledge or consent of individuals, GC Strategies use their identities to bill the government. And they use contractors with no security clearance, despite attesting they actually had security clearance. $60 million for ArriveCan. Now, we know the government has the ability to get the money back. We know it's serious enough that the RCMP actually raided the home of one of the owners of ArriveCan to seize documents. The government needs to stop coddling their friends in these high-priced management consultants. They need to start getting value for money, and they can start by clawing back the fraudulently stolen money from GC Strategies that they took from Canadian taxpayers. It's time to put our taxpayers first, not liberal insiders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will get an opportunity a little bit later to be able to add a lot more detail in terms of what it is that the member is stating. But I want to go back to what his colleague posed a question to one of her colleagues from the Conservative Party saying that GC Strategies came into being in 2015. Well, Mr. Firth had a company with a partner which actually amalgamated into GC Strategies, and Mr. Firth was actually involved in that company and received literally millions in contracts from Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre when Pierre Poilievre was a part of the Stephen Harper government. So I posed a legitimate question to his colleague. His colleague even acknowledged that fact. And I'm wondering if he would still apply those same principles, and if he agrees he would apply the same principles, then does he believe that the House does have an obligation to look into Cordell, the same company with Mr. Firth was involved in?
Member for Edmonton West.
I'd like to thank my colleague from Winnipeg North for his usual nonsensical intervention. The Auditor General looked at the contracting. They did not find issues from the Harper era. They found issues that seemed to start in 2015 when this Liberal government took over. The Auditor General did 2 different reports on contracting around this issue. Not once was an issue brought up of poor procurement or fraudulent activity during the Harper era. It was all done during the Liberal era. I think the gentleman needs to reflect on himself and his comments and look inward to see where the corruption is.